My name is Samantha, and I'm 34 years old. I was married to Michael for 6 years, and it was anything but easy. Our marriage was supposed to be the beginning of a happy life together, but instead, I found myself caught in a nightmare orchestrated by him and his mother. From the beginning, Michael's intentions were clear, though I was too naive to see it. He saw me as nothing more than a housekeeper, someone to help pay the bills, and then be discarded once I had served my purpose. 6 months into our marriage, Michael's behavior began to change. He stopped using my name entirely, calling me just you instead. The warmth, the kindness I thought I saw in him when we first met, had all but disappeared. He often spoke about our financial future, and I mistakenly believed our values aligned. I grew up in a household where every penny counted, and he admired my thriftiness. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realized he was only interested in what I could contribute to his plans. Less than a year after we married, Michael informed me that we'd be moving in with his mother. There was no discussion, no consideration for my wishes. It was all decided between him and his mother, and I had no say in the matter. Moving into his mother's cramped house was only the beginning of my troubles. They took out a loan for renovations without telling me, and then insisted that I quit my job to take care of the household. It was suffocating. Samantha, as a wife, you need to support me and my parents. You'll have to quit your job, Michael told me one evening, his tone leaving no room for argument. He even suggested I could work remotely if I insisted on keeping a job. It wasn't a request, it was an order. He spoke as if he were granting me some grand favor, and it made me sick to my stomach. My protest fell on deaf ears. "Why should I consider your feelings?" Michael would say with a dismissive laugh. "I'm the head of this family." The words felt like daggers each time he said them, cutting deeper into my sense of self-worth. Living with my mother-in-law was unbearable. She treated me like a servant, always complaining about how I managed the household. Even though I was working remotely, she constantly demanded that I quit my job entirely. "Hey, housemaid, when are you going to stop pretending to work and start focusing on what really matters?" she'd say, never missing an opportunity to belittle me. The disrespect was relentless, and Michael never intervened. Instead, he joined in with his mother, belittling me at every opportunity. Despite all the sacrifices I made, nothing was ever enough. Michael and his mother wanted me to contribute to the mortgage payments for the house they decided to renovate, a decision made without my input. Michael's sister also frequently dropped by to add to my misery, treating me like an outsider in my own home. She would accuse me of freeloading, as if I wasn't already working myself to the bone to keep that household running. "You should be grateful we're letting you stay here," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. It was maddening. One evening, after another exhausting day, Michael smirked at me as he said, "You heard my sister, right? It's only natural for you to help pay the mortgage. You're my wife, after all." It was then that I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. If I stayed, I would lose myself completely. But I had to be smart about it. My parents were aging, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I knew that if I made any rash decisions, it could jeopardize everything. I decided to play along until the time was right. I worked remotely, helped with the mortgage payments, and endured their mistreatment, all while planning my escape. Over the next few years, I managed to save a substantial amount of money, enough to pay off the $300,000 mortgage entirely. Michael was oblivious, too focused on his own selfish plans to notice what I was doing. He thought he had everything under control, but I was quietly gaining the upper hand. The day I paid off the mortgage, I knew it was time. I had the divorce papers ready, and I planned to leave that house for good. But before I could bring it up, Michael beat me to it. "Now that everything is settled, it's better if the nuisance leaves, right, Mom?" he said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. My mother-in-law nodded in agreement. "You're right, Michael. Samantha, it's time for you to go. We're divorcing you." They thought they were kicking me out, but they had no idea what was coming. I handed Michael the divorce papers, and he signed them without a second thought, too eager to get rid of me. As soon as I had the signed documents, I packed my things and left. They were laughing and cheering as I walked out, but those laughs wouldn't last long. A week later, Michael called me in a panic. "Samantha, what's going on? "We got a notice to vacate the house. Did you do this?" he yelled, his voice frantic. I couldn't help but smile. "Oh, that? You must have forgotten, Michael. I paid off the mortgage and the house is in my name now. You need to leave." The shock in his voice was evident. He had never bothered to check the paperwork, too confident that he was in control. "You can't do this. Where are we supposed to go?" he pleaded. I remained calm. "I hear your sister's place is available. Why don't you all move in there?" I suggested, the satisfaction in my voice impossible to hide. They had nowhere to go. Their relatives wanted nothing to do with them, and they ended up moving to Michael's father's family home in the countryside, a place where they were not welcome. They were given one small room and were expected to work on the family farm to earn their keep. It was poetic justice. I imagined Michael and his mother, who had once looked down on me, now being treated like burdens by their own relatives. It was the fate they deserved. As for me, I found freedom. My old workplace reached out to me and I resumed my career, this time with a newfound sense of purpose. I had given up so much for Michael and his family, but now I was taking my life back. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was even room for happiness again, something I had long forgotten I deserved. My first week back at work was surreal. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be respected and appreciated. My colleagues welcomed me with open arms, and it wasn't long before I felt like a valued part of the team again. My manager, Lisa, even pulled me aside one day and said, "Samantha, we're so glad to have you back. You have no idea how much we missed you." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I had spent years being told I was worthless, and hearing that I was needed felt like a lifeline. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I found a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but it was mine. It was a space where I could finally breathe, where I didn't have to answer to anyone. I decorated it just the way I liked, filling it with plants and cozy furniture. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could heal. One evening, as I was unpacking a box of old photo albums, I came across a picture of Michael and me on our wedding day. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember what I had felt that day. I looked so happy, so full of hope. It was almost as if I was looking at a different person. I felt a pang of sadness for that version of myself, the woman who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. But I also felt a sense of pride. I had survived. I had come out on the other side stronger and wiser. My parents were incredibly supportive throughout everything. When I finally told them about the divorce, they were shocked but relieved. My mother, who had always been gentle and soft-spoken, surprised me with her strength. "Samantha, you did the right thing," she said, holding my hand. "You deserve so much better." My father nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with pride. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," he added. Their support meant the world to me. I had spent so long trying not to worry them, but now I realized that they were my rock, and I could lean on them. As the weeks turned into months, I started to feel like myself again. I reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with during my marriage. They welcomed me back without question, and it felt like no time had passed at all. We would meet for coffee or dinner, and I would tell them about my plans for the future. "I want to travel," I told my friend Jenna one afternoon. "I want to see the world, experience new things." She smiled and said, "You deserve it, Samantha. Go for it." And so I started planning. I had always dreamed of visiting Italy, of seeing the rolling hills of Tuscany and the art in Florence. It felt like an impossible dream when I was married to Michael, but now it was within reach. I saved up, and a year after my divorce, I finally did it. I boarded a plane to Italy, my heart pounding with excitement. It was the first time in years that I felt truly alive. Italy was everything I had hoped for and more. I wandered through vineyards, tasted the most incredible food, and stood in awe in front of Michelangelo's David. I met new people, made friends, and found joy in the little things. A glass of wine at a cafe, the warmth of the sun on my face, the sound of laughter. It was as if I was rediscovering the world, one beautiful moment at a time. While I was in Italy, I received a message from a former colleague, Mark. He had heard about my divorce and wanted to check in on me. We exchanged a few messages, and when I returned home, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. I hesitated at first. I wasn't sure if I was ready to let someone new into my life. But there was something about Mark, his kindness, his patience, that made me say yes. Our first dinner was simple, just two people catching up. But as the night went on, I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. Mark listened to me, really listened, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. We started seeing each other more often, and slowly a new relationship began to form. It was different from what I had with Michael. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. Mark knew about my past, and he never pushed me to talk about it. He understood that I had scars, that I was still healing. "Take your time," he would say, and he meant it. Being with him was like a breath of fresh air. It was easy, comfortable, and for the first time, I allowed myself to hope for a future that wasn't filled with fear and uncertainty. One evening, as we sat on my couch, Mark turned to me and said, "You know, Samantha, you're one of the strongest people I know. What you've been through, most people wouldn't have made it, but you did." His words brought tears to my eyes. I had spent so long feeling weak, feeling like a failure. But hearing him say that made me realize just how far I had come. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Looking back, I see my marriage to Michael as a lesson. It taught me about my own strength, about what I would and wouldn't tolerate. It showed me the importance of standing up for myself, of not letting anyone else define my worth. I had been through hell, but I had come out of it stronger, more determined to live life on my own terms. Today, I am happy. I have a career that I love, friends who support me, and a man who respects me. But most importantly, I have myself. I am no longer the woman who let others walk all over her. I am Samantha, strong, resilient, and ready to take on whatever life throws my way. And for the first time in a long time, I can say that I am truly, unapologetically happy.